Hello and welcome back to Clownfish TV. It is me, Geeky Sparkles, and it's just me for a couple of videos today because Kneon has other things to do. And I know we just did a Star Wars video. I know we've been talking about Kathleen Kennedy, but I saw this. I just had to do this one too because the people that love The Last Jedi just will not stop. Okay, and they keep with the same old, stupid, tired narratives that have been unproven. And I'm just like, would you just give it a rest? It's dead. It's done. No matter how much you argue about it, it fundamentally destroyed the franchise. You can track back pretty much everything that destroyed Disney Star Wars to Last Jedi. I mean, The Force Awakens did really well. I personally came out of theater saying that I already saw the movie and that Rey was a Mary Sue, which we're going to bring up in this article. But it is what it is. It's just been toast. Ever since Kathleen Kennedy took over, everything's just gone down the toilet. And no matter how much you want to yell about it, it's not going to change the facts. So get ready because I'm going to rant in this one, I have a feeling. So before I get into it any further, please like and subscribe. If you do, I'll give you a woohoo. Woohoo. And we're going to talk about this. So this disgusting film article, how The Force Awakens changed Star Wars and pop culture itself 10 years ago. Well, I'd argue that Tyler here is right in the fact that a lot of things changed in pop culture, especially with Star Wars, when this came out, because up to that point, people were predominantly still in love with Star Wars. You had Rogue One, but we're not like doing movies every year, and it wasn't overkill on the stupid TV shows. And people still, were excited about Star Wars, still love Star Wars. We're very hopeful moving forward, especially when you're teasing The Force Awakens as being a reuniting of Han, Luke, and Leia, a reunion, I guess, of those three characters. And you think that, oh my gosh, we got an ex-stormtrooper who's going to be a Jedi, and there's another girl who might be a Jedi, and there's all this cool stuff, you're like, oh, this might be really awesome. And then you get to see the movie, and then you're like, okay, well, one, I've already seen this movie a couple times, and two, Rey's and Mary Sue. And, Tyler's really upset about that. And Tyler, we're going to talk about that in a bit. But, until then, you can just kiss my butt. And then we got to The Last Jedi, which completely effed it up. And, of course, Tyler here is a Last Jedi fan. And I'm going to talk about why I think that is and why I think there's this whole generation of people that defend this one film so much. And it ties to culture, pop culture, and social media directly, and people's perception of, main character energy. So we're going to talk about that. So this article stops out about, they're talking about The Force Awakens released a decade ago, and they're talking about how that went. And they said, today the Star Wars franchise remains as bountiful in content as ever. For people like Tyler, who only liked the new stuff and frankly wasn't there for the original and wasn't part of the decades of goodwill that brought it to this point to begin with. Even though its cultural significance has decayed into a shell of what it formerly was, thanks to these movies and people like Tyler, there are countless factors and opinions on where Lucasfilm went wrong. Yeah, and most of them are right, and then there's Tyler. On the 10th anniversary of The Force Awakens, the one actress that plays Maz Kanata said, a good story for another time, or in the movie or whatever, instead of repeating decades worth of well-trodden discourse. Yeah, do we ever get an answer to where the lightsaber came from, Maz? No, we didn't. Tyler, we didn't get an answer to that. So it goes on about here. Okay. Star Wars used to be more than a popular IP. And then given the currency of the brand, it's hard to imagine that Star Wars once defied fandom. It was a treasure passed down from generations. Yeah, Tyler. Again, you're going to tell us all about how the new movies are great and how all the fans that have passed it down from generations are wrong. Okay. The release of Star Wars movie used to be a certified event. Yes. Class was interrupted the day of the first trailer for Force Awakens dropped, so my teacher could play it on the projector. Okay, I'd be that teacher. But that just tells me you were in class, in school, when that happened. So you don't know about the treasure passed down from generations from 1977. You don't know about that stuff. And at that point, if you were in school, you probably either missed the prequel trilogy too, or very little when it came out. So no, you don't understand how it was. BB-8's image was plastered over the aisles of retail stores, and those toys are still languishing at Ollie's, Tyler. Pre-sales for TFA crashed at ticketing sites, and before reserve seating became the standard, audiences lined up for hours to snag the best seats in the house. Yeah, sweetie, back before tickets could be pre-ordered at all, I stood in line People stood in line for hours to go see the movies, even up to the re-releases in the 90s. I stood outside in line with my friend. We were like the first or second people in line, and the line wrapped around the building, and we stood in line and waited. So you don't remember any of those things because you weren't there. And people were crashing the ticketing sites for The Force Awakens because they thought they were going to get Han, Luke, and Leia back together again. You have all the old fans willing to give the new story a chance and coming back for thinking they're going to get their old cast together and they're going to be part of the new cast going forward, and they might pass the torch, but it's going to be an actual goodbye to the original cast or an actual, respect, if nothing else, to those characters. But you don't understand that, Tyler, because I don't think you were even alive. All right? But do tell us all how to feel. I'm waiting for that. I left school early to go down to the now demolished AMC downtown at Disney to watch it. And they played with a Star Wars shaped beach ball. Okay, they were having lightsaber battles outside of the theaters I was at, but okay. I mean, I don't think anything wrong with playing with beach ball. Then they were talking about how it was released, and then that was the apex right before the rise of the fabricated culture wars. And the backlash towards inclusivity that characterized the Trump era. So we have a far leftist who's pissed about Trump. It's the site writes itself. If someone's going to say about The Last Jedi being the bestest thing ever, immediately you can pretty much predict everything else they're going to say. Okay, it's tired, it's predictable. They're going to stick to the narrative script that has been disproven countless times. But here we go. However, it struck me, talking about The Force Awakens is fundamentally flawed. There's no denying that. However, it has stuck with me throughout the past decade because along with Rian Johnson's The Last Jedi, it is one of the few Star Wars stories that fully embody the idea of Star Wars belongs to everyone. Right there. There's this mentality I've noticed. And the ones who adore The Last Jedi love Broom Boy and love that Star Wars belongs to everyone and she can be a nobody, except they retconned that with The Rise of Skywalker. Because they all grow up at a time with social media and YouTube and TikTok and all those things. Main character fucking energy. Y'all think you're the main character in a story. See, the reality is, and what these things used to reflect was that sometimes there are people who, have special gifts or talents that put them above everybody else, that make them, give them a reason that they can do things that you cannot. Like, there's different people have different abilities that other people can't have or don't have for whatever reason. And this whole idea that everybody can do that, even when they can't, is ridiculous. This whole idea that people for years have earned their position or they worked hard or they did whatever, but you could just go in there and say, yep, I'm a Skywalker now because I named myself that. It's this mentality that everything has to be about me. I have to be the main focus of everything. I'm the main character and I can be the main character and it's all about me. Used to be like, okay, I'm not a dude. I'm not, Luke Skywalker, but I can identify and understand where he's coming from because there are things about him that I can relate to my own life, or I can look at and be like, oh, that is somebody I wish to aspire to be. That inspires me to do better. This person, these characters, I'm not these characters, but I can find something that resonates with me inside me that makes me want to be heroic or do better or be like them or learn to do, I want to be I'm not a firefighter, but I might look at them, and look at burning into a burning building and saving lives and being like, you know what, I want to aspire to learn how to be a firefighter. I want to aspire to learn how to save people or something because I was inspired by that character, that person. That's how it used to be. Now it has to be about you. Everything has to be flat out dumbed down or taken down to your level so that anybody could be Rey Skywalker. Anybody could be a Jedi because Broom Boy. I mean, this is ridiculous. And I see it, and it's usually the same age range, around that same generation, and it's pickling over the internet that you have to be everything is about you. You're the main character. It's always about you and how you could do anything because you're you. And it's like, no, you cannot. You have to learn that sometimes there are characters and they're fantastical characters and they do these amazing things, and it's not something you can do, and that's okay. But I digress. Anyway, I think you know what I'm talking about. So they're talking about, what happened in the movie. And yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about John Boyega, which you're probably going to say people have hated, which isn't true. People loved Finn. They thought it was an interesting idea. They wanted him to be a Jedi. But no, everything was to Rey. Rey, who just suddenly could fly the Falcon better than Han and Chewie, even though she's never been on it in her whole life. Rey that can pick up a lightsaber. Her and Finn both picked up a lightsaber to fight Kylo Ren. Yet, Finn got his butt kicked, but Rey somehow just holds her own. She can stop Jedi, infiltrating her mind just on sheer skill because she's her. And then they go down here and they talk about the Mary Sue thing. And I'm like, where is that out here? Oh, here. They talk about the Mary Sue. They said that's not true because, she was scrappy and spastic compared to, the blind rage Ren displays. And the infamous Mary Sue criticism that swept the internet is nothing more than poorly veiled sexism. Okay, Tyler. I'm a woman, Tyler. You're not. I am a woman. And you know who was the one saying she was a Mary Sue? Me. The woman. I was at the theater and I was with my husband, and I talked to a bunch of male fans afterwards. I was the one who didn't really care for the movie. They all love it. They're glowing praise about it. My husband was in the middle. But a lot of people were raving about it. And I was like, I already saw this movie and about her being Mary Sue. They weren't the ones saying she was Mary Sue. I was the one saying she was Mary Sue. And then later people started thinking about it yeah, she kind of was Mary Sue. Because she was. But don't tell me it's rooted in sexism, Tyler. I have a vagina. Do you? No. But Rey does. So don't you try to fucking tell me, a woman, that I'm sexist because I said she was a Mary Sue, because she was. I'm sorry. Her character is a Mary Sue. And they're like, well, so was Luke. No, Luke wasn't, because Luke couldn't do shit. He even the Death Star he blew up, he got the port. Part of it was using his force sensibility and senses and things that are innate. But a big part of it was he used the bullseye womp rats back home, which were no bigger than the exhaust port. So he had target practice, and that's why he could hit it. Not just because he was the Force. I'm sure the Force played into it, but it wasn't because if you have skills for something, you have innate aptitude for things. And you can have an innate aptitude, but there are still limits to your innate aptitude. Very few people in the world might have aptitude for art. They're not born and being able to do look, I'm going to be able to pick a pencil now and do all the art you could ever imagine because I have the aptitude for it. It takes practice even with aptitude. Hence, she's a Mary Sue, Tyler. Sorry, not sorry. The new Golden Trio. The Rey was the most developed. The rest of the supporting cast hold their own as likable characters. Finn is one of the more original elements of The Force Awakens. Agreed. Reformed Stormtrooper. He gives a sturdy sense of selflessness and loyalty that's easy to root for. In the first movie, by the second movie, he's gonna desert because he's scared. Poe radiates Han Solo's swagger and Leia's rebellious spirit. Also a great character that they later ruined in the movie you love. We'll talk about those, but John Boyega, Finn was supposed to be the main character. That's the way it seemed. They showed him first. At least he was going to be training for a Jedi or something interesting. Yet you robbed him of all of it. They're talking about how they always got along really well since the beginning, which is cool. And they're talking about Finn and Poe are in everybody's headcanon because they had such a great dynamic, and their impact on queer fans is still felt today. As Finn Poe remains a missed storytelling opportunity. Let me guess, Tyler, you're gay? I'm just going to take a wild stab here. I could be wrong. But, so you're a shipper if nothing else. You're a flippin' shipper. So nothing I hear I wouldn't expect. The Solo family bloodline haunts the narrative. Because they're talking about Kylo Ren and all this other stuff, and they're talking about brand new characters, and The Force Awakens passes the Skywalker test with flying colors. Always going on about The Force Awakens is great because it's shot in a beautiful way and high contrast colors and skillful craftsmanship and all that stuff. And then they're talking about how it looks too polished. They're talking about using Star Wars iconography is the center of the new heroes. And they're talking about, they said that The Force Awakens plays it safe, which I agree. I agree that it plays it too much like the original films, which I've said. It's sad that it holds back from being a truly great movie. Unlike what? Let me guess. The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens wraps its brave aspirations in the familiar, true, and it's the iconography is the center for narrative focus. Well, yeah, you're gonna have to introduce new people, so you're gonna have to give something that's, kind of familiar to get people to accept it and to come into it. That was actually kind of not dumb to do that. And then by the next one, everybody's really excited for the next thing that's new. And that's where The Force Awakens goes into The Last Jedi. And that's when they lost the fandom. That's when it breaks in part. That's when it's a piece of shit. They said, that's a passing of torch, made a movie made to celebrate the younger generation and makers of the future. Again, that's what the intent was, but you didn't do that. You just ruined all the old characters, killed Han, destroyed Luke, made Leia the new Luke, and then because Carrie Fisher Sally died, got cast off too, and then it's about this trio that's not even a trio really until the final film. Like, at least with Han, Luke, and Leia, they were together a lot. They had their moments apart, but you could tell they were a unit, and they were going to, since the first movie was established, they were the trio. They were together. They were the heroes. And they followed that through. You don't, even if they're off on other missions apart, they're still the trio. You didn't even get that vibe until The Rise of Skywalker with these three. Okay? And then they're like, okay, for the first time, a strong female lead, a black man, and a Latino man with a new face of the franchise. We had black guy in Star Wars before. There was already a strong female lead. Leia was for the first time there's a strong female lead. Oh, kindly get fucked, Tyler. Kindly fuck yourself in a hard, painful way. That is bullshit. Leia was always a strong female lead. Padme was always a strong female lead. But Leia especially was a strong female lead. That was like the first time ever. Tell me you're full of shit and don't know what Star Wars is without telling me you're full of shit and don't know what Star Wars is. Same person. It's sexism if you say if Rey Mary Sue. But then the dumbass, the man with a penis, the dumbass, says, oh, she's not a strong female lead. But thank God, Rey's here, the Mary Sue, to be a strong female lead. Oh, kindly get bent. And then black man, Latino man, yeah, cool. Those are my favorite characters in The Force Awakens. And what happened to them by The Last Jedi? The one you love, the movie you love, because it says you could be a Jedi, Tyler. They completely bastardized and ruined Finn and Poe in The Last Jedi. They completely walked back everything that was good about them in The Force Awakens to make them unlikable shells of themselves in The Last Jedi so Holdo and Rose Tico would have somebody to teach. Now, this is coming from a woman, Tyler. Do go on. Star Wars is for everyone became Lucasfilm's go-to catchphrase. That's what this is about. People like Tyler who think everything has to be about them. Star Wars always was for everyone. Women like Star Wars. If you looked at the pictures when Star Wars came out, there's every kind of person ever in those lines. It was already for everyone. It was diverse then. It had a bunch of, it had a story everybody related to, it had characters everybody loved. It already was. The only reason Star Wars was around for Disney to buy for a ridiculous amount of money was because Star Wars had a huge fan following globally, and it always was for everyone. You can't get that big of a following if it wasn't. And then, yes, while it skewed male, and it still does, Tyler, even though Disney has tried otherwise, nothing has crossed over from Star Wars into the female demographic, except for the Mandalorian came close because of Grogu, but nothing from Star Wars has crossed over to be predominantly female. It's always been male, and there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean because it's a male-focused franchise that women and minorities were kept out. That does not mean that at all. You're just a dumbass, Tyler. You're a self-important, self-centered, everything has to be about me generation that can't understand that not everything has to be about you, okay? It was a big deal then, and it continues to resonate now with the few idiots that are left, especially in the virtue of diversity, as the virtue of diversity is under attack. Again, Tyler. Where was Star Wars attacking diversity? Just because you had Lando and it was one black guy, but you had all kinds of characters on there that weren't white, weren't straight, weren't male, whatever. You had all kinds of monsters and creatures that were supposed to be like other beings that didn't have to look humanoid. It was always about diversity. But the diversity was in the fact that they were trying to show that there's all these alien species and races, and the Empire was very humanoid focused. I mean, heck, Thrawn wasn't even, it was rare that he was a Grand Admiral because he wasn't like basically human or human adjacent. He was, but you know what I'm saying? And the thing is, it's like this guy, diversity is under attack because, people are mad. And again, people wanted Finn to have a bigger part. They liked Poe. There already was a strong female lead. There were several prior. We had the prequel trilogy. Samuel L. Jackson. There were several characters that weren't white, straight, or male. You're full of shit, Tyler. You're just looking at what you want to look at, what you want to focus on, and it's because it's your Star Wars for you because you were in school when it came out. So you're already telling me you're not that old. For fuck's sake, Tyler. Representation matters. Here we go. There are obvious shortcomings in Lucasfilm's representation, and I'm far from the first to point this out. Keeping in mind we should consider the impact remains important. In my teenage years, okay, you were a teenager. I stand by pretty much everything I've said so far. I ran a Stan account and met a plethora of fans from all walks of life in the Star Wars fandom. Oh, for fuck's sake. You know what, Tyler? I used to sell Star Wars toys at college, and I was a girl, and it was back before you were born. Oh my God, right? Or you were a baby at least, but it was a long, long, long time ago. Probably before, you were probably a baby before you were born. And there was all kinds of people who liked it. And I was a teenager then too. And I read all the books and everything else, and I was a fan. And you couldn't find fans as much as you can now, as easy as you could now. But what I did, we'd get along fine, and there was diversity among them. For many of them, The Force Awakens was their entry point. So for you, and for you and the people that you associate with, that was your entry point. However, again, I want to reiterate, Star Wars had 2 other trilogies before this came about. It was huge before Disney bought it. It is now in the shitter. Tyler, why do you think that is? But do go on. The thin post shipping community helped me embrace my gay identity. Oh, there it is. Fucking shit. Told you. Tyler is a shipper and he's gay. I fucking called it. And I didn't even read this article all the way through just from what he was acting. Dude, come on. Seriously. So everything I'm hearing is about you. I should feel the same way you do because Star Wars is for everyone because I feel seen. Everything's your representation, not even though we already had representation, but the representation you want because you want to feel seen. And you're a gay shipper and you're mad that you didn't get Finpo or whatever the hell you're calling it. But you were a stan and you were a fanfic and shipper and you're gay. Guess what, Tyler? A lot of gay people like Star Wars before you were even born. And they don't like it now because they think it's shit. My enthusiasm for Star Wars has led me to my closest friends. Well, you know what? Same. For instance, you're not being called a sexist pig. As we've watched each other grow up over the past decade. Oh, the past decade, guys. He's been a Star Wars fan for the past decade. Meanwhile, next year is the 50th anniversary of Star Wars being out in the theaters. But, for the last, 1/5 of it, he's been a huge fan, guys. So he gets to dictate everything and say everything that's what it is. Never underestimate the power of shared interest. Again, it was shared interest for people for almost 50 years, 40 of which were before you were a fan. My experience with fandom has fundamentally shaped me as a person. So is everybody else's. All the people you're calling sexist and making fun of and calling names to, their experience with loving Star Wars has shaped them and their thought process on it. The thought process you're dismissing because of your own, because everything's about you, because everybody can be a Jedi, right? It always was for everyone, Tyler. 2015 wasn't a fantastical time when bigotry didn't exist. Oh, here we go. Called it. John Boyega notoriously received backlash over betraying a black stormtrooper. No, he didn't, dipshit. If he did, it was very few people. And that's what you keep, because you're going to probably mention, Kelly Marie Tran in here too, because you're going to go with the same narratives, because people like Tyler just go by what they hear when they're in their echo chamber, circle jerk, Finpo fan click. They don't listen to what actually happened. They don't even pay attention. Yes, there were some people who didn't like Finn, but that was a very small group of people. Very, very small. The majority of people were pissed because Finn deserved much better. And if you listen, instead of run your mouth all the fucking time, Tyler, you would hear people telling you this. People were mad because they felt that Finn's story didn't get told the way it should have gotten told. And they feel that he should have been the main focus, not Rey. Okay? So you're full of crap, Tyler. The online chauvinist picked Daisy Ridley's body apart. Well, I can't speak to that. I never saw anybody doing that. I mean, that could be the case because they pick everybody's body apart. But you know what? I didn't see that. However, back then, it felt as if a society acknowledged that these were fringe hate groups. Oh my God. Tyler, who just then decided to be a Star Wars fan and spent 10 years being a Star Wars fan, thinks that anybody who doesn't like the movies is a fringe hate group. Yes. We didn't dignify their vitriol the way the media does today. No, instead, y'all were out there harassing the longtime fans of the show and or the movies, and you're being complete assets. And then, especially when The Last Jedi came out, calling them all incels. Basically, what you're doing here, because you have their narrative in your head. Your narrative is wrong, and you're full of shit, but you have it in your head because you decided to be a fan for the last 10 years. So you're the gatekeeper, and you know everything. Because Star Wars is for you, because that's the only way you feel seen. But it's all the other fans who didn't like it who are the problem, who are the vitriolic bigots and sexists. Because, Tyler says so, and his friends. The Force Awakens did come out as the post-political era, but it was one of the last moments for a shift towards conservatism and mainstream culture. Where have you been the last 10 years? Just asking. Because there has been a lot of political infighting and bullshit, but it definitely leans one way. And this is coming from somebody who also leaned that way. So you're full of crap again. It was a simpler time before society platformed a massive backlash towards inclusivity and identity politics. Because you know why, Tyler? You're why. Why are people mad about this? Let's take a minute, Tyler. I'm going to educate you. Okay, you're why people have a backlash towards inclusivity and identity politics, because that was always there. But you wouldn't know that, Tyler, because you only showed up like recently. But it's been diverse and inclusive for fucking years. What happened was people like you, Tyler, and your friends and your far extremist idiot friends, when you're talking about the vitriolic extremes, decided that everything had to be about inclusivity, identity politics, that we have to stop making new things, but make only old things, but redo them so they're all for you. And inclusivity, and shove in identity politics, inclusivity, see also She-Ra, and a million other things we can mention here. And people globally, not just here, not just where the conservative and mainstream comes from, globally, Tyler, rejected it. Because it went from being, we're fine with it. We've always think diversity inclusion is okay, to being that's all you could do. Hollywood thought that being inclusive meant black lesbians. It was ridiculous how everything was about stick a chicken, make it gay, make it lame. They said that for a reason, because it's the truth. And globally, people rejected this, Tyler. It's not just those mean, nasty men who are straight because I'm gay no, it's across the globe, Tyler. Why is Star Wars in the place it's in? They have shoved inclusivity and identity politics clear up to the acolyte. Where is it now? It's not just that. Hollywood in general, they're walking back from it. And I'm afraid they're going to go too far the other way. I'm afraid the pendulum is going to swing way too far the other way. And I hope that doesn't happen. I hope it goes back to center where it was. It's always been inclusive, but it wasn't enough. You guys wanted to make everything change, everything inclusive, everything identity politics. I'm sorry, but most of the population, it's a very small percent of the population who are LGBTQ+. Probably more because you keep adding letters. But I'm just saying, if you're going by each group of that, it's not, statistically speaking, it's a small part of the population. And most people had no problem with inclusion. And when it became that, 3/4 of the cast was inclusion choices that made no sense and were not reflective of, what you'd see in society. And it was shoved down your damn throat that people started to get turned against it. And I would honestly argue that the backlash towards it was done by people like you, caused by people like you, Tyler. People that are pushing it against story when just being gay was your whole personality trait. Everything about you, your whole personality summed up in that turns people against it. People are turned against it because you went too far the other way. They didn't care there was inclusion. It was there all the time. It's been there for decades. Nobody cared. And because nobody cared enough, you keep saying you want to normalize it. Well, normalizing it means you get to a point where nobody thinks anything of it. No one thinks twice. No one cares. It already was there. That wasn't enough because it all has to be main character energy, all about you and your identity and all your friends' identities. And that's what happened. God, I can't even. Sorry, this is going long, but it's going to be long. Don't care. Here can come from anywhere. The final moment of the Force Awakens is golden. Rey leaves the resistance at the base and coordinates the lands, Octu and all that crap. And then they said, and she reaches out and offers him a lightsaber. It's a cry for help, a call to action. Well, that's true. She's trying to get help. The ambiguity of their expressions say more than the piece of dialogue could. And Hamill seems to convey strength, grief, and everything in a single gaze. No, he didn't. He just sat there and stared at her. Okay, I never cared about anything as passionate as I cared about the sequel trilogy. It's 16 years old. Dude's 26 now, 16. So now we know that, he was born like in, 99? Today, it's hard to picture what that enthusiasm feels like. To agree, there's a melancholy of the fact that I find myself constantly chasing that thrill of fandom and community. Well, that's part of your problem there. You're wrapping your whole identity up in fandom and community. That's part of who you are. It's not all you are. As much as Star Wars has fallen from grace in that time, I acknowledge that what I'm feeling is a major part of growing up. Yeah, think about how people feel that kept it around for 40 years before you started being a fan, dumbass. Think about how those people feel. This is how you feel after 10 years. Try being the people who grew up with it, and it was everything. And, you grew up, it was everywhere. Like we talked about in the other video, it was like pop culture. I can't express to you how important it was to pop culture in the 80s and early 90s. And then we got the books, the expanded universe, and I read most of those. And then we get into the games, and then we went until we finally got, more, we got the prequel trilogy and all that stuff. How about those people? Decades. How do you think they feel that we got to The Force Awakens and the fandom essentially fell apart? But because you liked it, all you care about is how you feel. For somebody who's so worried about, inclusivity, you sure as hell are lacking. All you care about is inclusivity for you. You don't care. You're just automatically called, you're just baseless, vitriolic, bigots, sexism. All you care about is what it feels like to you. Well, can you imagine how it feels like to people who like me who have been around since almost the beginning? I mean, since I was a kid, Star Wars was, and people older than me. And then you keep putting these narratives about what it was like, but you don't know because you weren't even fucking there. And you're wrong. Looking back at the 10th anniversary of The Force Awakens, I mourn to some degree what Star Wars used to be. Oh, sweet pea, getting back to the line. It's a long fucking ass line. Okay? Used to be. How do you know? All you know is this. At the same time, I've come to realize that I'm mourning what it was like to be a carefree teenager too. Well, that's probably true. But people like you are why the thing's in shambles. They're going on about, The Rise of Skywalker makes Returning to the Force Awakens extremely difficult for the majority of fans. Well, that's across the board. As it exposes the limits of J.J. Abrams' flawed mystery box style of storytelling. Yeah, that I'll agree with. The widespread sentiment of wasted potential, especially since The Last Jedi left a huge door open for Abrams to do whatever he wanted. It didn't. The Last Jedi took everything he set up and pretty much, ended those threads and wrapped it up in the way that Abrams wanted, that Rian Johnson wanted. Rian Johnson, who prided himself on being a subversive. You can't do that when you're custodian of a franchise. When he does his own stuff, he's fine. There's a difference. For what it's worth, there's still a lot to love about the movie 10 years later. Han and Leia's love for each other, they divorced them. But my love for The Force Awakens is not diminished. It's merely evolved. Again, all I'm hearing is you. But you're projecting you onto everyone else. Oh my God. In dire times, I found great comfort in The Force Awakens' brave, inclusive message that my generation, again, it's all about that main character energy. I'm telling you, it's all this one age range, will shape the future. First of all, you have to stop being on the internet writing stupid hit pieces and moronic shit takes like this to shape anything. That every life in the galaxy is significant, unless you're one of those vitriolic, sexist bigots, am I right? That all came before him. And that even when self-doubt plagues our minds, a hero can come from anywhere. Well, a hero can come from everywhere. But the difference is not everyone could be the hero. Not everyone, and there's this disconnect between old and this recent mind slip of that everybody can be the hero. That's why I like anime so much. It doesn't say that people can't be heroes, but they don't just get it. You don't just get handed it because you're you or because you're diverse. You have to earn it, or you have to have some kind of special skill or ability that sets you apart. And that's fine. Anybody can be a hero. That's true, but not anybody can be a Jedi. That's the difference. You equate being everybody can be a hero with everybody can be something else, and that's not true. And there's nothing wrong with admitting that. There's nothing wrong with I identify people who are like me but who aren't like me, and that's okay. Everything has to be about seeing yourself and about you. And I think you need to grow up some. And I think you need to stop, telling everybody else that they're this, you're these terrible people that just don't understand. It's like, no, you don't understand. You literally just come into it and you're trying to change everything about it and tell everybody else that they're wrong. It's been around for 50 fucking years. And it was going strong until the last 10 when people like you came in. Where do you think the problem was? I don't know. Maybe look in the mirror for a while, Tyler. There you go. Sorry I went long, but I was just not going to sit by and let that article go without saying something. So please like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.